for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. So anyone have any, we did have one printed agenda, only had 10 on new business, but there should be a new one with 11. Does everybody have that? The 11th is point broadband non-disclosure agreement. And John, I think you wanted to move something off the consent calendar on there.
Yeah, on the consent calendar, we've got the item C, Gratiot County drain notices. I'd like to put that into an agenda item and perhaps we can have a discussion about prepayment.
Okay. And so we'll make that number 12.
Okay.
Okay, anyone have anything else they want to add? All right, we're looking for a motion to approve the agenda then. Motion by Commissioner Bailey, second. Support by Commissioner Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We have an agenda. Brief public comment. Any member of the public wish to address the commission? Matt, you see anybody online?
I don't see anybody connected in for public comment.
Alrighty. Then let's move on to the consent calendar. John's already pulled the prepayments off of there. Anyone else want to split anything off?
Consent calendar.
Motion by Commissioner Bailey to move the consent calendar. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Lemmerman. Any discussion?
Mr. Oosterhoff, I just got a quick question on the Hope House update. There was an item in there that was highlighted, but it didn't have anything to do with ARP. And I wondered if you had highlighted it for us to pay attention to it.
I did not highlight anything in that, so if it was highlighted, it came from Hope House that way. So I apologize.
Okay, because it didn't look like it had anything to do with that. Okay, that was my only question.
Ready? We have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
I oppose, nay. Motion passed. Hey, Tracy, looks like you're up.
Sure. Not much tonight. I would bring to your attention the attachment, which is a very brief update on the class comp study. She was not able to be here this evening, but we are wanting to get regular updates in front of you. In just a few days, though, this document will be out of date because we've progressed beyond some of these timelines. This references staff questionnaires where staff answer questions about their positions. That piece of this has actually been completed. These positions are now in the hands of department heads, and we are to be completing questionnaires about our direct reports. That is underway now. And of course, as the memo indicates, PayPoint is out there seeking comps. So they're able to do that even before receiving the department head's work. So it is all proceeding according to plan along the timeline that's been established, and we're very pleased with the work so far. Beyond that, I really need not comment because the work that's been ongoing is reflected in agenda items that we'll be talking about here later. And of course, you will get the full financial report at the next meeting from Chris. So again, keep it short. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Tracy?
Just real quick on this, when this group of folks that are doing the study, so we turn in kind of what we do, every person who works here kind of, in their position, what they do. Is that somehow matched with somebody? I mean, they have these backgrounds on, say, another county that this person does the same job as this person, and so they kind of match those up? Or is that are you just in that pool of, we got so many clerk's assistants, or I'm not even sure what they call them in your office. I mean, the clerk's assistant does this. And do they just say clerk's assistants in Montcalm County does this, or how does that kind of work when you?
We evaluate more of the component parts because really there are no two clerks anywhere that are doing exactly the same things. So it has more to do with, okay, they're doing this function. This function is thought of as having a certain amount of weight, requires a certain amount of skill, requires a certain amount of education. So however those things are grouped. So it's the component of those pieces.
So the people who are filling these out are just like some of the clerk staff or treasurer staff filling those out?
Yes.
Everybody that.
Employee that's not a department head or an elected official
I see.
is completing these. And then the department heads are reviewing and completing.
Kind of saying that really is Lucy's job or whatever.
Yes. Terry's evaluating and the others. And, Emma did her own.
I see.
And then Terry is also doing one on Emma and the others.
I see.
So, yeah,
Okay, thanks.
you bet.
Alrighty, thank you. Committee reports, John?
I would like to do a little infomercial for Parks and Rec. And Matt, could you put up that maintenance project? So Pete Little, who's here tonight, was nice enough to send this to me, and we talked about this at the last Parks and Rec meeting, but somebody had asked, what does Parks and Rec do in the And there is a big list. And so this list right here of 2023 maintenance projects, these are the things that Parks and Rec will be working on. And you can see here at Reed Park, they're working on the gatehouse. They're doing paint curbs, strip handicap pad, and the basketball court, replacing rotten posts, bollards around the gatehouse. And there's just all kinds of things that need maintenance on, that need work on, as well as patrolling the parks and just making sure that, there's no damage, that things are being taken care of. And, Pete, while I got you here, I would invite you to add to that, add any color to that you'd like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, John. So a lot of what we do in the parks too is maintaining equipment. For example, today we went through all of our lawnmowers and those and we're getting them ready to trade them in for new equipment. We're getting quotes on new golf carts, on new mowers. So that's what we're working on that right now, is to do an inventory of all of our equipment. And then at the same time, our parks are still open. So we're out, like John mentioned, we're out walking the trails, looking through the disc golf course, checking bathrooms, making sure trash cans are not overflowing. So there's a lot of that daily operations. Again, our parks are open year round. We see walkers out in the parks. We see disc golf players out there. When our ponds freeze over, there'll be ice fishing, there'll be cross-country skiing. So it still requires a good deal of everyday operations to be out in the parks. We're also looking at projects for next year, which we'll be talking about later in our agenda. So I'm putting together details for 2023 capital improvement projects. And then we also have reservations that are starting to come in. So we take reservations 6 months in advance, and we're already into our reservation block right now with getting phone calls already for next summer. So yeah.
You can't have a summer without the winter.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that, our 5 facilities, we don't just have the 2, Reed and Hupshire. We also have Luniak and Pompeii, and we have the 127 bike path that we maintain, so that all 5 of those facilities are open year round and require a good deal of operations. So.
And I didn't even know that we did the 27.
Yep.
So I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, because some people think that they just hibernate. So.
Yeah.
You brought up ice fishing.
Yeah.
I'm always getting concerned about this time of year because we might have a few days of freezing and somebody will see ice and it's a half-inch thick.
Right. And that's what we have out there right now, just a thin glaze. Right.
Do we have any Do we take any responsibility for that or is it at your own risk?
It's at your own risk, just like any other water-based activity we have in the parks.
It's at your own risk.
Yeah. So we don't feel, we feel it'd be a greater liability if we were monitoring it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's at your own
Make
risk.
sure the public understand it's at your own risk. Exactly. Because this time of year is very sketchy.
Yes.
I'd want 6 weeks of cold weather before I go.
I'm always surprised when I do see people out early, you know, when that ice isn't quite ready yet.
Well, I always remember years ago, we used to have January, February, half of March was below freezing all the time.
Right.
And you had 8, 10 inches of ice,
Right.
maybe a foot of ice.
Right.
You didn't have to worry about it, but
Not anymore.
anymore, you gotta really be concerned about it. So I'm always concerned about people wandering out there.
Right.
All right.
Anything else, John?
Thanks for your help.
You bet. Yep, no problem.
That's all I had.
All righty, George?
Well, let's see, on, let's see what date it was. I'll tell you here in a second. November the 21st, I went to Breckenridge for their meeting. And then on the 3rd, we had a board meeting. And that's basically it for me.
Yep, I just had the health board also. Jan?
On the 20, this was just looking on the 28th, I went to the training course in Frankenmuth. I went with Tim and Dave, the two new commissioners. And a lot of new things coming down. I also bought a book of some of the things that have changed. And I loaned it out to Tim. Dave to look at it and also Dave, to see if they want to get one too. But there is a lot of things, a lot of new changes that are going to take place. Or have taken place. But it was a really good day. We had breakfast there, we had lunch. Our only disappointment, we didn't have chicken. But otherwise, it was a good day. And what was interesting is that they put us into groups. We had a chance to talk to other commissioners and other counties, and I thought it was very educational. So I think it's a good class, at least every other year for commissioners that's been on the board. I haven't been there. I think it's been 6 or 8 years since I've been there. We didn't go through the court years.
We went together, it's been fun.
Okay, maybe, but that'd be 6 years. Yeah, 6 years.
So now the chicken angle was you were in Frankenmuth.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else, Jan?
Nope, that's it.
Sam?
Just a little information on Fulton Township. They appointed a supervisor. He was there about 3-4 weeks, resigned, give him a couple weeks notice. They had an appointment. They put a flyer out to get supervisor positions. They had 3 apparently applications. Gentleman who resigned applied again and they appointed him again. So
He didn't learn the first time.
but he had a 2-week vacation. Yeah. That's about it.
Ready? Let's move on to new business. First up is MERS. This gonna be online?
I just wanted to take a moment to introduce Gratiot County's MERS representative, Marty Daggett. A few of you had emailed me some questions for her to prepare for, so she is prepared for those questions. And she will be discussing our OPEB fund and pension funds.
Good evening. How are you? Thank you so much for letting me attend your meeting tonight. There's a few things that I thought we'd go over. As Chris mentioned, the first one would be your OPEB funding. So this is, we call it the retiree health funding vehicle. This is used investing dollars to put it aside for your retiree healthcare costs. And so you invest that with MERS. Right now you're seeing the quarterly statement. So this was at the end of September. You had a little over 1.8 million. And then if you go to the next account, Chris, the next report. Oops. Sorry.
Set this up. Just
No worries. No. You can see that it's now at 2.1 million. So as of the end of November, you're at 2.1 million. So that's your most accurate statement. Obviously, we're in December, so we don't have those numbers yet. So again, that is invested in the total market portfolio, which is the same as the defined benefit plan. That's something that MERS holds as the fiduciary. So the board handles all those fiduciary responsibilities, all those investment responsibilities, all of those different kind of things. So you're in one portfolio that is a very diversified portfolio. It's the most diversified portfolio that we have in our system. And so that is why it is something that we, if you invest in that one, we take on that fiduciary because we take full ownership for that. And so again, it looks like it's in one pot of money. It is fully diversified between equities and bonds and between all the different types of things outside of those, like private sector pieces. And so I know that there was at least 2 questions on some of our investments, but before I go into those, any questions in general on the OPEB fund that you have, the purpose of it, investments? So Chris is back at the quarterly statement. So it's going to be a little outdated because at the end of the quarter, we were down to -13. Right now, that portfolio is sitting at close to -9 based against our benchmark, which is similar if you weren't investing with MERS. It's close to a -15, -16. So MERS is still outbeating the benchmark. If you've noticed in the market on the news, you notice that like everything is down right now. We're in a adjustment stage with all of the markets. So that's expected. So a -9 and now being at 2.1 million is actually good news for that portfolio.
What happens if, like, say the stock market really takes a drop and we go negative for several months? What do you do?
Meaning, like we did. Like, do we just invest differently? Is that what you're asking? So the portfolio is kind of built differently. We are not going to invest reactively. It's built based on a lot of standards that are approved and looked at. We have fluctuations within bands of how you can adjust within fixed markets versus stocks versus some of those other private equities pieces. But we don't react to the marketplace in that way. We are built to be kind of a downside protection, meaning we were expecting inflation to rise for the last few years. So we've built into the portfolio things that are inflationary protected, meaning instead of just being in bonds, bonds get very severely reactive to inflation. So instead of being in fixed equities and bonds, we invested more in like Australian farmland and Hawaiian coffee and Peruvian avocado fields and things like that, that function very much like a bond, but aren't impacted by inflation. So we've already kind of built that in for that. Will there still be ups and downs? Absolutely. But you don't want to draw out of the market when things are low because you're essentially realizing that loss. So again, we're going to be very disciplined in our approach from an investment perspective versus reactionary.
Yes. Excuse me.
There were 2 questions that were sent to me. One was, is any of the portfolio subject to ESG, which is environmental, social, and corporate governance? And the answer to that question is no. And so was there any follow-up to that? Because the answer is no. I know there were some concerns with some other states that had some things in that, and they've pulled that. We don't have any holdings like that, so we're not subject to.
Is there any plan on going that way?
The second,
Some people might not understand what we just said.
it's a type of investment, and sometimes those are they have certain rules and regulations of how you can function within those. We tend to not go into investments with a lot of strings attached to it. I guess would be the easiest way to say that without going into a lot of technical things. The other question was, part of our private equity investments, are any of them gated? Meaning there are redemptions or withdrawals that are halted, meaning they can kind of hold on to those dollars even though you're trying to take a withdrawal. And the answer to that, again, is no. We don't do any kind of those type of investments. They are not in the portfolio at this time.
Now, there is some private equity in the.
There's portfolio, private equities, absolutely, but none of them are gated, meaning they don't have any of those extra rules of,
So there are totally liquid all the time?
no, absolutely not. Private equities are not always liquid
Okay,
for sure, but they're not that type of,
you have a guarantee or an assurance that whatever the rules of the private equity investment is, that you will always be able to have access to the prearranged portions ahead of time.
correct, like prearranged pieces, meaning there are things that, of course, if you're going to buy Peruvian fields or Australian farmlands or whatever those are, like those kind of pieces, there are times where you're going to say, yes, we are investing in this amount of money. We're not going to pull it for this amount of time.
Right.
We have those agreements. Those are private equity agreements. There's no way around that. But there is nothing that also says, and even when you could withdraw, nope, we've stopped you and we have all these extra rules behind the things like the gated piece. That is something that we're not invested in. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps
Okay.
a lot. I'm very glad to hear both of those answers.
Sure.
So I'll ask another question. Recently, like I think in the last 6 months, 3 cryptocurrency exchanges have bit the dust and
We're not in crypto.
Okay.
I'll just tell you right now, we've had people going, why aren't you in crypto? And we're like, yeah, no, we're not in crypto. That's
I
not
see
something that we're.
the Ontario teachers pension lost $95 million in that.
No, there have been people who have been bitter at MERS for not being in crypto, but we do not feel that it has been vetted enough for our standards to be in our portfolio. Yeah,
I have one more question.
sure.
So you have someone here that's retired and they're drawing for MERS
Sure.
and they pass away, but they don't have, so they have, their husband's already passed away.
Okay.
Do you give the children a buyout or how do you do that?
So you're on to the defined benefit plan. Is that what you're talking about, the pension? Can I hold that till we finish with the retiree health? I just want to make sure I have all the questions answered on the investment side. I will answer that though. Sure. Any other questions about the investments, the retiree healthcare fund?
I know we got a couple $1 million with you. How much dollars do you manage under your portfolio? You're just in Michigan.
Yes, we are just for Michigan municipalities.
And so how many dollars do you guys manage total?
9 billion.
9 billion?
And that can fluctuate again and maybe
Sure.
I have to look at it every day, but yeah. There's over 1,000 municipalities in the MERS system and over 100,000 participants. So it's a fairly large system. Any other questions? All righty. So now we'll move to the defined benefit plan. And to give you an idea, again, this is there's a couple different programs, but this is the defined benefit, meaning the people who worked here quite a while ago now, but that are in that pension plan, meaning they're getting a lifetime benefit promised to them when they retire. So Jan, your question was in regards to, okay, I'm a retiree. I've named in your situation, then you said they kind of named their spouse as their survivor beneficiary. Is that the situation? So let's say I named my spouse passed away before I did. What happens is when an employee names somebody else as would be their beneficiary, called a survivor beneficiary, they take a reduction in the payment that they get to cover that other lifetime, because it's one pool of money covering 2 lives now, right? So if that other life is no longer being covered, then it's being covered, that amount of money is just covering the one life. That means that person will no longer get a reduction. They actually bump up in the amount that they receive on a monthly basis. But that also means when they pass on, that there will be no more payments to anyone else. There's no way to name another beneficiary and add that. The only caveat to that is if because your employees have contributed this to as well. So if something were to happen and someone were to retire and within a year, and again, I hope this never happens, right? Knock on wood, whatever, but that if someone passed away and their beneficiary passed away at the same time and there were still contributions left, their money, their dollars left, not the county's dollars, their dollars left, that is refundable to a named beneficiary. So those extra dollars would be given to that family or whoever they've named.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Okay. So that's kind of the plan as it works on a participant level. When we look at the defined benefit plan on a funding level or an employer level, this is the annual valuation that you receive every single year. So it covers the calendar year of 2021. You receive it by the end of June of the next year. So you got this at the end of June of this year. And if you go to page 6, please, Chris, you will see the first thing that everybody wants to know is what's our funding level? It's loading. Try again. There we go. So the beginning of the executive summary, you can see at the end of 2020, the county was funded at 89%. At the end of 21, you were funded at 95%. So that is good news. I want to celebrate good news. It's always important to do that. I do want to say that some of those numbers, I want to caveat some of those numbers with there were some policy changes that impacted plans. And you will see most plans went up higher in funding than in typical years. We don't usually see that kind of movement. Some of that has to do with the investment marketplace, not the market we're in now, but the market from last year, where the average was closer to, our returns were closer to 14% versus the negative group that we're in right now. But there was also something called dedicated gains that was put into place by our board last February. And so I want to put that in place. I'm going to talk about what that means, but I wanted to first of all, celebrate that. You guys are, again, you've been working, getting well funded. You've been paying that off. You've got a plan that's closed that there's not very many actives left. It's mostly retirees. So it's kind of winding down. So you're expecting that funding level to do that. It is doing what it's expected to do. It just jumped a little faster than probably you were expecting because of some of those policy changes. And I'll explain those in a minute. But good news at that 95%. So if you could scroll down to the very next page. In the page 7 at that table. Yep, right there. So you can see, and that's kind of hard to see, but you can see from right to left, if you go down to the bottom, Chris, there we go. There you go. You can see in October of 22, so last year in October, your total bill was that $623,724. You can see that. On the far right column, if you skip over 2 to the left, next year in October of 2023, so that's what your bill will be for this coming October. Next year's bill will be $393. So again, that cost is going down as that funding goes up, right? You're paying off that unfunded liability. So that cost is going to continue to go down because your funding level jumped. That may go down and it may waver a little bit, but we're expecting it to be on a downward trend. And I'll show you that overall trend in just a little bit. Any questions on that though?
On the 623, that's what we paid out last year to participants.
No, that is the bill that you're getting from MERS, meaning that you'll pay that on a monthly basis. I mean, that's the annual amount, but you'll pay that $51,977 on a monthly basis.
So what is our payout per year right now? I mean, what is the level of our payout? I know it changes every year, probably with death.
Meaning the total amount of assets that go out of the plan?
That go out of the plan.
Yep. Can I show that to you in a few charts?
Fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just because that way it kind of stays in the story. Perfect. If we go to the very next or at the bottom, let's see if it's at the bottom of this. Nope, it's at the top of the very next page. There's a bold paragraph. Sorry, go up a little bit. Sorry, Chris. The very top paragraph. There we go. It is a bold paragraph. We are not yelling. Everybody's like, why are you putting everything in bold? It looks like MERS is yelling. We're not yelling. We just really want to call it out. MERS is always encouraging employers to contribute more than the minimum contribution. That amount that I showed you, that amount going down to the $393, that is the minimum required contribution. Why we say that is because of the implementation of dedicated gains. And so I'm going to not make an assumption. I'll ask really quick. Did all of you watch the presentation by our actuaries and our CEO last spring, or like it would have been March of this this year about dedicated gains. I just don't want to bore you if you all watched it together or something. Okay, perfect. Not a lot of people did, but I don't want to assume and then you're like bored with me. So dedicated gains, what that means is we've adjusted a little bit of our approach in how some of the assets came into your plan. So what happens typically in every 5 years, we do an experience study. And I know most of you have heard me talk about an experience study where we have assumptions like life expectancy, what the investment returns will be, what raises will be, inflation, all of those pieces. Every 5 years, we look at the plan and say, does the experience of the plan match those assumptions? If it doesn't, we make adjustments. We've made adjustment to our investment return policy. For years, it was an 8% assumption. In 2015, it moved to 7.75. In 2019, it moved to 7.35. And each one of those moves, when we moved that assumption, your cost went up. The reason why was we were assuming your money's not going to make as much over the next 20, 30 years. Therefore, more assets have to come in. So when we do that, MERS was sitting at a 7.35 in 2019. Cue the pandemic, cue all of the different global pieces that have happening from supply chains and everything else in the marketplace. And the national average of portfolios, the assumptions that the actuaries use, that we use to benchmark, has moved more dramatically than expected. So it was hovering at like 7.5, moved to 7.3, we're at 7.35. The average is now at 7% and actually moving into like 6.99, 6.98 as these plans adjust to what's happening in the marketplace. Well, with this year, MERS being at 7.35 and the average being that 7 felt really high. So we could have done another adjustment and said, we're going to lower our assumption to 7%, and we're going to adjust your bill to account for that. However, which means your costs would go up, as they have done in the past. There was a conversation around, but we're sitting in a unique place where the last few years, so 2021 and 2019, the market returns were 13, 14% for MERS. So really high returns. And so it's really hard to say, hey, we're going to adjust your bill after we had these really high returns. Is there anything else we can do, a different way of doing this? So we did a lot of research, Gabriel Roeder Smith, our actuaries did a lot of national research. There's a few other groups that are doing something similar, but MERS put in something called dedicated gains. And what that means is we are taking, so our assumption, if our assumption was 7.35, if there's any excess returns above that, usually that's spread out over the next 5 years. That's our smoothing. So all those gains or all those losses are spread out over 5 years and experience a fifth of that for the next 5. However, we could look at it and say, well, since there's so many excess gains of those returns, could we use those dollars that are in the plan to buy down the assumption versus passing the bill on to you and adjusting your budget? And so that's what they did. They literally just said, okay, this amount of money would buy down the assumption. So you'll see in the rest of the report, instead of 7.35, you will now see the assumption at 7%. But that means we took a lot of the assets that were earned and put it into the plan immediately instead of spreading it out over the next 5 years, which is why your funding level jumped up higher than it would have because it would have been more gradual. It's assets that you've earned, right? It's just they would smooth out over time. That means a lot of those assets came in right now. Okay, what that then means is why we put this note in here is instead of it being smoothed out over the next 5 years, know that since those returns were used to lower the assumption, there's fewer gains being smoothed out. So in a down market year, which will still be smoothed out over 5 years, there's less of a cushion, that's Marnie's technical term, but there's less of a cushion of asset gains sitting there to offset those losses. Now, that was a policy that was obviously put in place, and now we actually have a down market year. Okay, so with that, we know, and you know, that this marketplace is going to be down. So that's going to affect your funding level. It always does. So we're suggesting that there are groups that say, you know what, we know that the market's down. We're going to put in excess of our required amounts to kind of offset that marketplace because we know a lot of the excess has already been used up to buy down the assumption. So we're simply making sure you're aware of the fact that you have the ability to put additional in if you so choose to offset that marketplace. You don't have to. It's not a requirement, If something that we just want to make sure you understand what dedicated gains means and how it affects the smoothing of your plan. I'm going to stop because that was a long conversation. What questions do you have?
I think you did a very good job of explaining it.
Thank you. I've done it once or twice.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Why wouldn't they take the gain? I'm not a financial guy, but why would they take the gains that they made, the dedicated gains, and hold them somehow to not have where we would have to pay more if you put them in right away against our assumption, and now we'll have to pay more to keep up, is what you're saying, right? So like the 393 really will just keep us up, and we'll have to pay more to stay ahead in a down market versus just keeping the gains to offset some down market.
So really, it's just the smoothing. So are you asking why we smooth out the market returns from year to year? Both gains.
Just to make it real simple, why wouldn't you keep that money in a savings account for us to say, okay, you're gonna have a down market, you should pay more to keep up, versus saying you got some money here that we had dedicated gains and you don't have to pay that.
Well, it actually kind of did because it lowered your assumption from 7.35 to 7%, which you want to do in a down market. You're never even going to get close to a 7.35. So that actually did lower that assumption. And you are already in a smoothing. We have always smoothed assets out. Anytime you have a gain or a loss, it is spread out over the next 5 years. So that is already in place. So this is just saying, instead of spreading that out, because you do need to lower the assumption. Now, you could look at it and say, you know what? And I have groups that do it, and I'll show you some of the charts where they say, you know what? They're going to lower it to the 393. And I think we should pay 450. You have every right and every ability to do so. But if we change it, if we lower it, it becomes required. Meaning if we don't do that and we lower the assumption without moving any of these assets, it will function as it always does, but your bill will go up and it will be a required amount. For some groups where their cost is still escalating versus decreasing, that can be a really big challenge. So this puts the ownership and the decision in your hands versus ours. So it gives you more of the ability to make those decisions based on what you think is appropriate for your budget and your plan. Because again, your plan is very different than a younger plan. You have a very mature plan that's trailing down. We have other groups that are ramping up. They have some are at 60% funded. You're at 95. There's a lot of, again, we have 1,000 municipalities. So there's a lot of different plans and a lot of different situations. The decision was made to give it the control to you.
Our plan is kind of winding down as far as people get older or whatever.
And there's no new hires going into the plan is what I mean by that.
We need more of that type of stuff. So what happens at the end?
The end. So the end of your last employee,
Boy,
last person drawing, which end.
drawing is today's his day, and
So there's no one left drawing on the plan anymore. They have all moved to a better place. That at that time, any assets in the plan, when there is no longer a liability, those assets in the plan go back to the county.
they come back to us. Okay.
And you determine what to do with those assets.
All right.
I have one more question. So you're saying the $623,724, we're going to pay that every month, right?
That's the annual amount. The monthly one is the above it.
By 12.
Sorry, that's the,
Divide that by 12.
there's a monthly amount right above it.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay. I was thinking that we had to do that every month.
that's a massive amount.
I was going to say that would be a lot of money. I just figured it out.
Annual amount. The monthly amount is right above it, which is at 51,977.
Okay.
That's for October, and then the 32.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Absolutely, sorry. I think I misspoke once and I probably confused you. That's my fault.
The way you explain the dedicated gains policy, let's say, for instance, 2022, December 31st. Let's say somehow the market is up 5%.
Oh, wow.
I know, let's just for pretend. Just for pretend. Now, is it actually since we're assuming 7, is it as if we're having a 2% loss that
Still a
you're
loss.
having to spread out?
Absolutely.
Okay. So 0 is the 7% assumption or the 735.
Meaning the even is
Yeah,
the 7% now. Yes. So if you make 7%, There's really no gain or loss. It's just the assumed number.
Because that's where we need that bogey to keep things going. So if the year would be up 8%,
Be a 1% gain.
and then we would see the county's amount that we needed to pay for next year, a slight lowering. Okay, so now, just so I understand, if we got to 8%,
Mhm.
we beat our mark by 1.
Mhm.
So you're gonna spread that beat over 5 years, so it's gonna be a very small.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
I think, I don't know if it's good that I understand, but I think I do.
Good. I think it's good you understand.
One quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you look at this plan at 735 or whatever we are, is that just us or is that like the whole MERS 1,000 people?
MERS assumption for all defined benefit plans is now at 7%.
Right.
It is for all the valuations. Any group that's in MERS in the defined benefit plan or hybrid plan, the DB portion is 7%.
Did better in the plan. If I don't say McCosta County did better than the plan that we did, they had a different programmer. Do they help offset some of ours?
No, each of your trusts are owned, you are all in your own legal trusts. Your assets can't help Flint and they can't help Ithaca and they can't help Imlay City. Like they can't do any of those things, right? So whether they do bad or good.
So when you're
make
spreading this,
decisions differently or not, doesn't impact
how do you
your asset.
say you're got a 735 for everybody?
Because you're invested, we invest, and that's an investment assumption. And so we invest those dollars. So that is our benchmark. We are over the long haul, our goal. So we look at a long perspective, we look at it at a 20, 30, 40-year timeline, not every year. We don't freak out if we don't get it every year because we're not going to. The market's never going to be that predictable. But over a 20, 30-year timeline, our assumption is that we will hit that 7% assumption. We have done that for the last 30. We've always beat our assumptions over the long term.
So back to 2 participants.
Yeah.
You have 2 participants, just say, and in our plan and their plan, our plan doesn't do as well as their plan. But
Doesn't
still,
as well. Tell me what that means.
at the end of the year, we haven't grown as much because we picked something different.
You can't pick something different.
Everybody in your plan is,
Everyone's invested the same.
I think we were forced to make this investment choice like last June or last
So
May.
this is the defined benefit plan. You have always been in this plan. There's never been an investment choice. The retiree health funding vehicle
Right.
is the one. And
oh, is that the one we made?
yeah,
Okay,
and that's the one that, again,
all right.
yep, I just want to make sure, I'm not going to pick on your word forced, but there's always an option. There is always an option for you to choose your investments. However, if you use that MERS investment, we cover the fiduciary responsibility. And from that perspective, there are a lot of other rules that you have to comply with and make sure that all your other portfolios stay in line. And so for the majority, actually, I don't know of anybody that didn't, but for most plans, they did not want to take responsibility. So there were some rules and standards that were passed that those funds are subject to. And so you would have to watch those investments along with everything else.
So when you say that you're the fiduciary, does that mean we've got Jack Smith, who is furious at the performance and he's going to sue us? He sues you instead.
We are the fiduciary.
Okay.
No, we can't control the benefits he's offered or anything like that, but we are, meaning if he thinks that, well, you gave this person a DC plan and you gave me that, we can't make that. We're not covering that decision. But as far as the investments, was there the due diligence? Are we watching everything to make sure it's in the legal standards of all the different governmental GASB standards and all those things? That is our job. And we are liable for that. You are not. And so that was another coverage that most groups chose, that retiree health funding, to take that coverage because they didn't want to have to take all of that on themselves. Because there's a lot more work and due diligence and a lot of other things you'd have to hire, probably some experts and things.
On our part either, because when Jack Smith retired, he would get the plans offered at the time that he paid into or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Absolutely. Okay. So if we roll down through the rest of the page, you can see in the middle, there's comments on investment rate of return. I just want to show you down in that paragraph, Chris, please. You can see now the investment rate of return assumption is 7%. So I want to show you where you find that in your report, just in case that's something that you want to question later. And then if we go to, I'm going to actually go down to page 11, please. Shrink that. So you will see every report, we give you kind of a 5-year forecast for budgeting purposes to get an idea. Again, these are ballparks, they will change every single year, but it gives you, it is not liking you today. There you go. So you can see for October 1st of 2023, that top line you'll see going across your annual contribution is 393,000. We see the forecast for the next few years, again, assuming that 7% return, that everything is perfect for the next 5 years and a 7% return. I promise you it won't be, but for assumption reasons, we have to put something out there. If everything is perfect, 7% for the next 5 years, that's kind of the general cost that you will see for the next 5 years. So you can see as a trend, your costs are going down. It may fluctuate slightly, but you're definitely is in the 3s versus the 6s. So if you go to the very next page, you can actually see, so this is the solid blue line is the assumption of 7%. We also put in an assumption of 6% and 5% because there are groups that's Treasury standard and there are groups that like to budget based on a lower assumption rate. You can always do that if you want to do that, but you can see that you're at 95%, you're going to move to 100% right around 2031, 2032. We're expecting that to happen. So if you go down, slide down to the second graph in that page, please. You can see your cost. So again, that solid blue line is your cost. And you can see when I said your trend line for cost is going down, that solid blue line is what your trend line will be. Now, will there always be a 0? No. Again, there may be fluctuations depending on if someone decides to live to 110 and we didn't think they were going to, and they kept like, there's always going to be fluctuations, market, those kind of things. But overall, on a large scale, this is the trajectory of your plan, which is a lowering of a cost. Any questions on that?
What then would be the advantage looking at this if we continue on that scale that's in front of us now? What would be the advantage of us to, let's say, put another $100,000 in a year?
So it can offset that. I have groups that want to get to a different percent funding for a certain reason. So they want their costs to go to 0 earlier. So they want to pay it off earlier and take advantage of a low marketplace, meaning everything's on sale, right? I can take advantage and eventually it will grow. And I want to do that kind of thing because I have a project or I have something for those assets and I'd rather be 100% funded in 2028. 2027, whatever that is. So you can always put an additional and that can change that trajectory. But so to your point, that's probably the advantage to that.
Okay, right now.
But again, it's not official.
This county is in pretty good shape.
You have done a great job of, you've done the steps, you bonded, you did some pieces to move this, to change this plan and how it was acting and funded. And it's doing what you expected it to do. And so I think that that's all of this, everything in this report, there's no red flags. There's nothing that's making me concerned. So I just but I want you to see the highlights of there was a policy change and I want you to know about that and that the trajectory is what we're expecting.
The advantage of this, let's say, by putting in another $100,000 a year, it would just get us to the end game a little bit quicker.
It would. Yep. And that's completely up to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Your blue line, 7% no surplus.
Yeah.
It's got some yahoos in it. And I guess what I'm guessing is, are you estimating a life expectancy of all participants of like 87 years old? And then by doing that, you're saying at this year, we're gonna have a lot of people draw off, and then this year, not so many, and then is that how that works?
Some of it's based on who you still have some actives in the plan when they retire, right? So you still have 22 actives in the plan. So they're still accumulating service. So that's going to adjust some of that when they start retiring off. When some people reach life expectancy. That could happen as well. We don't have an average age. We actually have generational tables for life expectancy. So it is gender specific. And it is generational specific, meaning your 20-year-old's life expectancy is very different than your 50-year-old's, very different 70-year-old, and we account for that. But yes, some of those weird little lines, is not a perfect straight line, right, are based on retirement dates, when people reach their life expectancies, those types of pieces. When the plan closed, like some of those things all impact that trajectory. Sure. All righty. So if we go to page 16 really quick. I'm just going to give you, if you scroll down to the very bottom of that chart, to give you an idea, remember I mentioned you have 22 actives. So you can see at the bottom, you have as of December of last year. So again, we've got another whole year. There could be people who've retired, but as of December of last year, you had 22 actives. You had 7 vested and former employees, meaning they're people, they will draw on the benefits someday. They're no longer working here. They're just not old enough to start drawing yet. So they're vested former employees. And then you have 110 retirees and beneficiaries. Okay. Then if we go to table 4, which is the very next page, you can see, whoops, it's at the very top. Sorry about that. So you can see last year at the end of 2020, your market value, so no smoothing, right? The market value of the assets was 32,878. This last year, it jumped to 35,608. Some of that larger jump is because of that dedicated gains, right? A lot of those assets jumping in, because you'd have to have amazing returns to get that kind of jump. If you go to the next table, now, Mr. Smith, I am coming to your question. So I did not forget about you, I promise. But if you look at cash flow, if you look at the bottom line from left to right, you can see in 2021, the employer contributions again was 270. This was for, again, 2021. Your employee contributions was about 23,000. The income investment was 5,000. You see that number is different than all the other columns. That's that dedicated gains. A lot of assets coming into the plan all at once, but you can see benefit payments going out. So when you ask me, what are we paying your retirees right now? In total, last year, it was a little over 2 million. That's for those 110 people covering those lives. And you see, as you see that column growing because you're having more people retire, right? So that's a natural occurrence. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Then the very last table that I want to show you, unless you have more questions, is the next page. And that's table 6. And you can see, again, from a overall funding perspective, I try to read mine since those numbers are quite. You can see, we look at all the liabilities. So for your active employees, the people who are still working, the total liability for their lifetime payments is a little over 10 million. Your vested former employees, those 7 people out there, is 1.2 million. The retirees is 26 million for a total liability of 37,608. With the assets being at 35,555. So when you do the math, that gets you to about 94.5% funded. So the total unfunded liability is $2 million, a little over $2 million. So when people say, well, what would it be to just pay it off right now? A little over $2 million. And that's pretty much the high level report. There's a lot more digging into the weeds if there are questions about that, but that gives you a general feel for the plan and how it's funded. But again, 95%, I'll expect it to fluctuate a little with the market this year, but nothing to cause concern. I don't see any red flags or anything like that. Any other questions for me?
Just a thought. I mean, as George said, we paid $100,000 in more a year. Our tail is shortening up by people dropping off. I mean, we would probably be pretty good in 5-10 years under that $2 million. Shorten it up on the end, and we're paying a little more ahead. Somewhere we would get to where we'd be pretty much even or pretty close.
Getting close.
Yeah. My next question is just the last question. How much does MERS, what's the fee for MERS?
The fee for MERS.
You charge us a fee and charge another county a fee, or do you charge on the whole 9 billion?
It's based on the assets in the plan.
Yeah.
And so that's in your net fiduciary thing. So it's individual for each, and I don't have that memorized and I don't have that report up. But Chris, you do have,
You have a different.
so that,
Is it? I guess.
meaning your funding level affects that?
You have 9 million under management, you charge a percent for that? Manage that 9 billion, or you manage us because we have, say, 40 employees and another place has 100 employees? Do you charge them a little more fee than us?
It's not based on number of employees, it's based on assets in the plan.
Okay,
And so it's,
the fee does fluctuate.
yeah, basis points based on assets in the plan.
Okay.
So, and you get that in a net fiduciary. I just didn't bring that number or have it memorized, so I apologize for that.
And I like to know how much it costs us.
Sure, absolutely. And so that would be in that report, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Still. It's the core.
There's a tough act to follow. That was impressive, wasn't it?
Could you understand everything she said?
I'm Charlie Perkins. I'm the district court administrator, also present on behalf of the courts, Jennifer Wood and Sabrina Silva. Zoom there. Special attention is Kaylin Flynn. She's our new project director of our specialty courts. So first and foremost, district court's not appearing for you today to ask for money. It's always a good. As noted within the documentation I provided, district court is requesting board approval to enter into an independent contract agreement with our former employee, Brian Wagner. As noted within the written proposal and agreement, which each of you have in front of you, we would like to contract with Brian in order for him to provide us consultation and co-facilitating services for our cognitive behavior programming and consultation and assistance with our special court grants. In regard to Brian's funding for Brian's services, we have specialty court grant funds in place to cover his consultation related expenses. And we have received written confirmation from the state court administrative office that consultant related expenses are allowable expense under their guidelines as well. In regard to Brian's co-facilitation of our cognitive behavior programming, funding for his services will be courtesy of District Court's Office of Community Corrections budget, which is already in place. We respectfully request the board approve our request and that Chairman Murphy authorize the independent contractor agreement.
Charlie, do you know how long this is gonna last?
Yeah, in the contract, George, we had noted an end date on that as September 30th.
Okay, so just get it a year.
Yep. And then the main thing is, George, we have well in excess of $500,000 grants that we need to reapply for. We can't swing the best on those, and we need to somebody that has been heavily involved and almost done it, by himself with Chris's consultation. So, and I'll tell you this, that moving forward, Chris has interest in become more involved in the grant and understanding and having a good handle on, the money that we're bringing in. I am as well as Sabrina, who's on Zoom, is involved in that. Of course, Kaylin will be learning that. I'm happy.
Well, I think a lot of your business runs on grants, and I think this gentleman had a better opportunity to come up. He left us fairly quick. I think it's really look at it as an opportunity not to have anybody on staff, but he'll come back and finish those grants and do what we need to get done. I think it's well worth the money, and I understand it'll be funded through these grants, so it really won't cost the county anything.
Yes, Sam, you're absolutely right. The consultation portion as it pertains to the grants is funded through the grants. Is co-facilitation of our cognitive programming. This is called MRT, is going to be funded through money we already have in place through our district court's Office of Community Corrections budget.
So with that, I would make a motion that we accept this contract.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Schmidt, second by Commissioner Bunting. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Motion passed. Thank you. And we're gonna bury it. We've got Pete.
Hello again. Pete Little, Parks and Rec. What we have tonight is a project, Upshur County Park, that I'm seeking approval for. This is to upgrade our boat launch out to Upshur Park. There is a boat launch there now, but it's pretty steep and gravel. It's not accessible. We often have issues with people getting stuck trying to back their boat down in there, just again, because it's too steep and gravelly. So we reached out to an engineering firm, Rowe Engineering, and they drew up some plans for us that we approve of, and we went through the bidding process, and we do have the bid that you see before you today. We're looking just to do the site work portion of that project. That is $49,500, and that's to rough in all the dirt work, do the concrete work and the gravel work. What it doesn't include is the floating launch platform portion of the project. That's something that we're looking to do a few years down the road. We want to do the site work and get ready to be able to have that launch. That way we can have that in the future if we deem that necessary, if we feel the need for that. So we did follow all the purchasing policies. We did just get the one bid back, but the one bid was consistent with the construction estimate that we got from our engineering firm. So we feel like those are good numbers. And we did do some background checks on the company. They had done a bunch of work for the city of St. John's. So they checked out as well. So we feel good with the bid and the numbers, and we would look to start this project in the spring. It has been approved by the Parks and Rec Commission, so they approved it for recommendation. And we do have the funds in our capital improvement fund for 2023. So happy to answer any questions you might have. Yeah, Jan.
Yes, if you do all of this work this spring,
Yeah.
are you concerned about it kind of washing away again?
No, I'm not at all, because I feel like it is a good design. Again, it was designed by the engineering firm, so it'll be at proper slopes and grades, and they've taken into account for erosion, because that was one of the issues that we had. Our current launch was too steep. It wasn't at the proper slope, so we were getting a lot of erosion, but they've taken that into account. So I do feel like it will be solid. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be my only concern.
Did you have concrete in there now?
Excuse me?
Concrete in there now?
No, it's just gravel.
So you can't drain that down. Can you drain that pond down? I mean, so what will they do? Just fence it and pump it?
So the launch where that's going to meet the water is actually, they're using this called geo cells, which are these plastic containers that will hold gravel. So they're not going to be pouring concrete right at the water's edge. They're going to be using that material, that geo cell material. So right now the ponds are exceptionally low. It's unfortunate they couldn't be doing the work now while the ponds are so low.
Yeah, I just knew they did some work out the Rainbow Lake, but they drained it down.
Ended up having to do that. Sure, yeah.
I move we have the money. I move that we do it.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Bunting. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye, opposed, nay. Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Next, Seville Township.
Good evening. We are here. We sent a resolution to the Board of Commissioners. Was everyone able? Oh, sorry. Tish Mallory from Seville Township Supervisor, and I have Ashley Gibson Smith, Seville Township Treasurer with me today from our board. And we are here today because we submitted a resolution for the right to waive the right to have the county review ordinances. We're self-zoned. In the past, we've had a couple of them that we were trying to get something accomplished as far as like a cleanup. Or we also had someone living in a camper. And for an example, the camper ordinance, we had to wait 30 days for a response. And so it kind of delayed the process that we have to go through when someone was living in a camper and we didn't want them to live in it any longer. That's just one example. We've had quite a few. We've had to go through our ordinances because they were old and needed to be updated. I did receive, and I can share the memo that I received this morning from Commissioner Lemmerman regarding this, because we've been working on this for a while. And there was a memo, I don't know, it doesn't appear that all of you received the memo regarding from Tracy Cordes
I forwarded the same memo on to
today.
everybody yesterday.
Okay, well, the memo was dated July the 5th. So, I mean, it is now December, but in the memo, it had stated, you know, there might have been some confusion. And we do know that the 30 days, if there is no response, that we can just, you know, do what we planned on doing anyway, which we can do that anyway, even if there is a response, because we're self-zoned. So it's kind of redundant, you know, to do that when we have these and we vote on them and they do their time and we do our due diligence as far as publication and everything. We do put it on our website and we also send it to the county. So it's already sent to the county. There were a few of the ordinances that we have done, which we still have 2 more to do, but noise, dangerous building, and cemetery, and those are all police power. And those we forward on to the policing authorities, the county, the state police, so that they have those in hand in case we do need to enforce any of those. But the other ones were solar and the camper ordinance, a medical and adult use. But all of those, there's just that delay, and a lot of other municipalities are waiving, you know, the county is waiving that to give those townships ability to do that.
Can you give an example of who we waived it for?
No,
And we're
you
talking
did
about other counties.
all the other counties.
Okay,
Mhm.
other counties.
So what's happened here, kind of give you guys a background. Once we became board members, you know, we're trying to follow everything and do the right thing. And we were advised by our attorneys, they reviewed the laws here and have advised us that this is the steps that we have to take. So we're following all of the steps, including this step to send it to the county planning commission. And we know we have the 30-day window if we don't get a response back. Just the way that our meetings fall with the planning commission, with your guys' commission, usually it's pushing about that 30 days. We've received 2 comments back. We received, well, 3, received on wind, solar, and our livestock ordinance. We didn't hear anything back on our camper ordinance. So that one went the 30 days, it lapsed, and we proceeded on with that. So it's a timing issue for us. So if you think about when planning commissions meet, like at a township level, the time between that, the time between sending it so it can go through a county planning commission, coming back to a board, having to go into a paper for 15 days before it can go into effect, like we're extending out a lot of things. When some of these things we are trying to kind of expedite and make sure that we can get policy in place as quickly as possible.
Is there any protection for you from the county when you start looking at wind and solar and you making the ordinances them yourselves and not having anybody else look at it? I mean, then you're going out and you're buying attorneys and that type of stuff to look at all that.
Oh, yes.
Yes, everything goes through attorney. Yeah, nothing, since we're self-zoned, the county doesn't have any say in that, or people couldn't sue the county or protect us, like we're self-zoned. We have to be protected by our own attorneys.
We have a municipal attorney, Foster Swift, which we go through quite a background on this before we do this. We go to other municipalities and kind of see what other ones do and what we like, what we don't like.
For example, the last one we did a livestock ordinance because our current zoning says if you have 5 acres or less, you can't have anything. 5 acres or more, you can have whatever you want. Well, if you're looking at the trends right now and people wanting to do kind of some sustainable agriculture and, the chickens and small scale type things, and looking at where we're located in the rural area, we did our research on that. We looked at 5 different ordinances around the area, and we took that and we, as a planning commission, I sit on the planning commission as well. We molded that to fit our township. We know what our township has. We know, we have 2 hamlets. We have, what would you call Wildwood Drive?
I would call those community. I mean,
Yeah,
they're more
like smaller communities. So we look at what does our community look like and what ordinance would best fit that for our residents, so that they're able to use their property for animals, but not infringing on, their neighbors. So we put that together that way. So it's a lot of research. I'll say our planning commission is really good about doing their research. They go out, they get multiple ordinances and they see. We have our public hearing. Another piece of that is public hearing. We have to have our public hearing before it comes up here. So there has to be time that it goes in the paper and for a public hearing.
We have 4-H clubs in our township as well, and so 4-H was an issue with that. I mean, if a neighbor really wanted to press the way the ordinance read, and if you had a couple sheep for the fair, or you had, some ducks or things like that, if they pressed it with the way our ordinance was, we just tried to, be respectful of the residents that, don't want a rooster right next door to them. We're allowing chickens but if you're in a hamlet like Elwell or Riverdale, then rooster is not allowed. And I believe we're at 5 for a limit of chickens? 5, and it has to be enclosed in a pen. It can't be running, free range. We had different things like that we did on that.
But that's just kind of an example on that. And then that actually arose because of an issue in our township, because of people having animals
in an excess.
And what it was.
And
So,
not on 5
yeah.
acres. It was a little shy of 5 acres. It was like 17 goats and they were getting out and yeah.
Some, they had cows tied up to a trailer.
Yeah. So ordinances like this are popping up because of complaints. So then, we're trying to do the right thing for the people in our township, but still going through the right steps.
Has our county planning commission ever denied something that you wanted to do?
They can't deny. All they can do is give a recommendation. So we've had different recommendations that weren't taken into consideration. We had some that were. It was kind of funny on the solar one. They said that it mirrored the county, but ours doesn't mirror the county ordinance. So I don't know where that one came out on that comment, but we take them. We go back to the planning commission. We read, this is what they have recommended. We discuss, is this something we would want to implement or not? And go for it.
So my real question here is that, so solar panels come to your township. We still need personal property on those, Jim? I don't know. Is there any disadvantage
Well, I think if we were to allow one, we have to allow all. And I don't think for the safety of everyone in the county that we should anything to change what the operation of what we're doing now.
Are other townships sending them in? My question is, are other townships sending them in? Because we didn't know we were supposed to until we were directed from our lawyers.
Yes.
So they are. So that would be my thing, is to if they are not.
But I just don't, I always said you do for one, you do for all. And at this point, I cannot see changing.
I guess all hasn't come and asked us. I guess I don't.
I don't like to have exceptions to the rule when we have blanket type things.
Is this resolution specific to Seville, or I read it that this would be for all townships?
All other townships could adopt the same resolution. I mean, they could use it as a, if they requested to do so. I mean, 6 of the townships are zoned by the county, so of course those wouldn't apply. And we are unique because of the fact of, population, having the 2 hamlets. We have a mobile home park out on 46. We have Lincoln Manor Estates there on Wildwood Drive, which is another platted community. So that's why it's a little bit different, where some of the townships that are self-zoned are maybe in primarily rural, so it's not an issue. I mean, for certain things, because of you're not having people close to one another like we have in Seville Township.
Is Riverdale part of Seville?
Yes.
Okay.
Tracy, you have any thoughts or any guidance? Are we missing something or?
Well, I don't know. I provided you the law in the memo. There's some reason that there is a state statute that confers upon counties this ability, this authority. But it's a limited authority because what you offer are you do a review and a recommendation, not an approval or a disapproval. I don't, and I think you might think about what this review and recommendation is about. I've never interpreted any of these to be weighing in on the legality or appropriateness of an ordinance. I think it's been more as I've watched the planning commission review these things, it's been more of is this consistent or inconsistent with what the county is doing in other ways? In other townships or in other projects. So it's a consistency piece. It's also a communication piece. Sometimes I don't think the county would know, and I appreciate you do. You send those things to us, but I think by and large, the county as a whole, planning commission and so forth, wouldn't know what other townships are doing. And not through no fault of the townships, but because there would be no mechanism for a broader sort of communication. So I don't view the review, to summarize those comments, I don't see that review as being for legalities. They've gone through the lawyers and you've had very thoughtful discussions. In terms of the time lapse, to pass ordinances is to make law. And I don't know that, say, 60 days or something for all of that is an excessive period of time. This is for the board to decide. To go through all of that process is so terribly long when you're making law. That's a matter of opinion, but I think that ordinances must be very carefully thought through and processed. And there is a lot of process there to get a lot of comments and thoughts about it. You have the public comment period, the public hearing process, the posting in the paper to, and then the county planning commission way. So to take a thoughtful approach that might take a month or two to accomplish that, I don't know if that's an excessive period of time. But the greatest piece is some consistency. And just some broader review that, beyond that, it's great points being made. I can't dispute anything that you've said. We all know what the law is, about that 30 days that you don't have to be delayed beyond that. And that's important that everybody know that. So those are my disjointed thoughts.
Just kind of looking at this, I would be probably in favor of voting for this, but I think it should specifically say that's for the township and say it's Seville Township. And it should be clear that you're a home zone township, if that's the right words.
Yeah, they do their own zoning.
Right, but this would have to be, maybe say for Seville Township, a home zone township or something, so it's clear what we're doing,
Self-zoned.
So, yeah.
Well, the process that we have to go through to get to that point isn't just a matter of planning commission. It's brought to the board. Then the board discusses it. And then, say a resident comes in, then you suggest to them, okay, you need to go, if they came to the board first, you have to go to the planning commission. And it might, hold, by law, you hold 4. Probably in the last few years, we've had, 6 to 8, yeah. But if you're only doing it 4 times a year, you either have to call a special one, then you're paying your board to come in on that extra. But, so they go to the board, to the planning commission. It might take more than one planning commission meeting because they're bringing it to the planning commission. Planning commission discusses it. Then they decide, okay, you can look into this and you look at that. And so it might be with the planning commission for 2 or 3 meetings, which could be 3 or 4 months. And so then we have a resident that still has 17 goats beside them. In the meantime, other things have escalated, and we've got a dog killed one of the goats because finally one of the goats got out. And it was more than goats. It was ducks, it was geese, it was pigs. This is just one resident. There was others that they had issues with. Then by the time it goes through the planning commission, then it has to go to the board from the planning commission. So, it can end up being 6 or 8 months. It's not a 60-day thing. I don't even know if you could do it in 60 days.
So just of all of that process, just 30 days with the county.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, when you say just 30 days,
If you don't have time in 30 days, then you can just go forward.
yep, we can. But when you say just 30 days, it's usually more than that. It's like 45 to 60, because it's where dates align from the time we have a planning commission meeting to sending the information to waiting our 30 days, then to wait for our board meeting, because it never falls like, oh, our 30 days lapsed.
But that's at your end.
But it's because of that.
The county, we have 30 days regardless of the scheduling of the meeting. So that delay is your end, not at this end. Am I understanding you?
Yes, but it's because of that 30 days. That 30 days causes the calendar to that.
And the subsequent scheduling of your meeting.
Of our meetings, yes.
Our planning commission meets once a month.
Once a month.
Yeah. Not every 3 months, not every month.
No, it does meet every month, but by the time by the time we get communication.
See the argument that we're the holdup, because you just explained you were 3 or 4 months trying to get things done. So our 30 days isn't really your holdup. Your system you might want to look at your system and see what you can do, but I don't think the 30 days that we have to review it and help you really the problem. I'm listening to you explain, and you say you've got a planning commission that holds every 3 months.
Well,
We don't.
Yeah.
no.
We're about every other.
That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Well, by law, you have a
By law, you have
minimum
4
4 a year, but we always have more than 4.
But I'm just saying, maybe you might want to look at your own process of doing business and shorten that timeline out.
We have been like for when she was saying that, she says by law, but in the last 2 years, we probably have a planning commission. We have them back-to-back months. We'll have a stretch, in the summer where people aren't meeting. So like, July, August, that sort of thing. But usually it's not when we have something active. This livestock ordinance, it was an active thing. We added meetings in there to keep that moving.
I still don't believe that, like, taking the county out of the process is a very prudent idea. There's a lot of other things that can go on other than, and I know your animals and things are one of your big problems right now, but there's other things that can come down the line that are even bigger problems. And if you're left to your own resources, you may get yourself into some trouble. And if you had somebody independent to review that, it might help you out a lot. I'm just saying. And once again, if we do for Seville, we got to do for another 15 townships. And I don't like that idea.
Well, it would be for anybody that does their own zoning.
Yeah.
6 would be eliminated. No,
So there you go. So
But so when you're talking about, just talking out loud here, when you're talking about, being prudent and protecting us or seeing something different, all that this is doing is going before your planning commission, which this has already gone through our lawyers, who are the ones that are setting it and making sure that we're protected by law. I mean, your guys' planning commission, I mean, they're not lawyers. They're just people in the county that have their own opinions on zoning.
I beg to differ because not everything you're gonna do is gonna go in front of a lawyer. And I'm gonna tell you right now, we have courts because lawyers can't decide on the same thing. You know what I'm saying? You may set yourself up for a lawsuit that you don't even realize. So I'm just saying, another set of eyes in that short a period of time, in my opinion, can't hurt a thing. Can help but not hurt.
I think you deserve a vote, so I'm gonna make a motion that we adopt your resolution, subject to the suggestions that Chuck made, that it specifically says Seville Township, and it specifically says that
a zone township.
self-zoned. So I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Lemmerman. We have a second. I believe I can second it. Yeah. So that'll put it on the floor. So any further discussion on it?
Can you read the,
We'd have to have,
resolutions in the packet? Well, yeah, read the motion again.
To approve and sign the resolution subject to Seville Township and South Zoned.
a self zone,
Oh, a township.
right?
A South.
I just have one question. Does that mean that you're no longer part of the county?
No. No. All it means is that we are just skipping the review of the county, which the review of the county is just, they're just reading it. And sometimes we get suggestions back and sometimes we do not. Sometimes there's no response at all. We've had times where 30 days went by and we didn't even get an acknowledgement that you even received it. So.
That just means there's no.
Pardon me?
That just means there's no recommendation or comment.
Right.
But you're not succeeding from the union.
No.
No. No,
We're not.
still in Gratiot County.
Yeah, and we're still, I mean, we're all together, so we have our ordinances up online, like it'd be something we'd still send to a county. I mean, if you want to know what's going on in our township for that open communication.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Probably should do.
Yeah, I look at it, I guess if they're having problems out there, and we're not seeing them. And we can't change it. I mean, we can't tell them, no, we think you ought to do it this way. I guess I have a problem. No, I don't have a problem either way with it. If that's what they want to do. And if there's a disadvantage for us somewhere, then I probably don't want to do it. But if nobody sees a disadvantage for the county.
That's pretty much where I'd be at, Sam. So any further discussion? Angie, could you give us a roll call vote?
Bunting,
Yes.
Lumberman,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
No.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We're not gonna sign this one.
You'll have to resubmit something.
Okay.
Okay,
Andrew,
next.
do you think that's to you? I didn't.
Acted by us.
Do you want it to go through?
Each of us.
Don't care. I just want to see it.
That's.
It's not as key.
So you shouldn't suggest that it goes to you.
I don't remember seeing that.
Okay.
So, all right, great. And we have a public hearing. Jim, you handling this?
Yeah. Yes, I think probably read about it in the paper, but there's a potential for a new hotel project at the corner of Alger and M46. In any case, part of it would be a brownfield project there. There's some obsolescence, and also there was a little bit of, I believe, asbestos in some of it. So in any case, the brownfield has been approved by the Brownfield Authority, and Pine River Township has concurred with it. So the next thing we need to do is actually hold the public hearing at this body, and after that public hearing, decide whether we approve it or not. So a question would be is, could we set that date for the 20th of December? Which I believe is your next.
At our next meeting, Jim.
Yeah, all righty, sounds good. Is he suggested if it's gonna be like a name brand hotel, or is he gonna do
I don't think
name or?
quite far along to the point of what the whole plan of the layout is gonna be, but the big thing with it right now, and the part that was so wanted by Pine River Township is, there's still a swimming pool inside that thing. It's got water, and so I didn't walk in there, but in any case, so the first thing is to get it demolished. Everything's got to go out of there.
I had heard it was condemned.
Yeah, it's actually been declared a dangerous building. That's why you've seen the fencing that they put on it temporarily. It's going to take a little bit of time to get some of this done, just from our standpoint of that to approve. But the first thing's
There'll be no original structure. That'll all be.
All gone,
Okay.
all gone. So the restaurant will be gone, hotel will be gone, and there was an old bowling alley / whatever.
Bowling alleys included?
Yeah.
Great.
So it's going to be pavement out and everything.
It's an exciting development.
It's, for those of you who haven't read about it, it's a gentleman that graduated from Elma College named Greg Hatcher, who also, by the way, has now become the college's largest gift individuals that they've had. He's also he just finished up the last gift for the library area, but also is committed a significant dollar amount to build basically an indoor practice thing out by where the soccer fields and some of that are. So Greg's a very successful insurance individual down in Arkansas. And remembers his alma mater, and alma mater is very happy that he remembers him.
Yeah.
It's worked out real well. So, and the plans yet are still
This sounds like it could be a wish list on our wish list for the airport too, that this happens.
yeah, there's a lot of wish lists that could happen here. Yeah, Greg actually comes up in a jet, so
There you go.
there's a little part of the thing too. So
Just got to get him some fuel.
got some
Which I think is covered, maybe.
exactly from that standpoint.
Plan on coming, but there's no hotels.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, I've been involved in a couple of meetings. It's gonna be a great opportunity for that whole corner up there.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to set the hearing?
I believe we do.
A motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Bunting. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passed. It'll be the next meeting.
And the last, you want me to?
You got more here?
Yeah, there's one other thing that we had too, was that we needed to reappoint two people. One's myself for the Hospital Finance Authority, which we're in the process of making a decision with the Hospital Finance Authority as whether we're going to keep it or not. But until we do, we need to make sure we maintain the proper people on it. And then for our Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and Economic Development Corporation, George Bailey, we're asking to extend his term that expires from this year and through 2028. Mr. Bailey or Commissioner Bailey is agreed to stay on.
I'll make a motion that we leave Commissioner Bailey on
And Jim then.
and Mr. Wheeler on the Hospital Finance Authority.
Is that the same term for you then, Jim?
Yeah, that puts me through 2028.
Motion by Commissioner Bunting. We have a second. Support by Commissioner Bailey. Any discussion? Or questions? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Righty. Tony, it looks like you're up with the rotunda.
Tony's been sitting in his nice cool office,
Oh.
zooming in. Hopefully he can get video.
Oh, here's a
There he
picture.
is. And he's going to run through the next three items. The first two are projects we've really been trying to get going for a long time here. So Tony, you're on.
Oh, we got you 3 for 1.
That's right.
Tony Miller, I'm the department head for community development, the building official. Part of our capital improvement plan, we were wanting to get the rotunda, circuit court, and we've also included probate. The plaster was starting to deteriorate, fall down. It was unsafe. We solicited bids once before. We didn't have any luck. We did have some people send us some quotes. I believe you have that information. There was one from Percha, Dave Cole Decorators, C Squared Painting, and John Canning and Company. They were actually out of Connecticut, but Bud Percha is actually, I would recommend Bud Percha Painting. They've actually worked for the county before. They did some exterior painting and they were involved with some of the connector building, wallpapering and such. They came in with a low bid. Looks like it's going to be a winter time project, so we should be able to start fairly soon, get that taken care of.
By way of process, I just want to be very clear to the record that we solicited bids for this project, got none. Then we sent it out again later, trying to hit a different group. So what you have in front of you is the result of a bid process, just not the first go round. We checked references for Bud Percha and you'd done some residential work, but we also, there was a reference that could speak to this company's work in it's kind of a church sort of setting, something a little more comparable to this project. So we have confidence that they can do this work.
Yeah, they were very good reference. It was a church that was built in 1881, and they were also involved with a small museum project in Edmore, and that woman spoke very highly of them. So very good recommendation. So, and
48,000, right?
Yeah, 48,156.
Yeah.
So any questions?
I would move that we accept.
Motion by Commissioner Bailey. Do we have a second?
Second. I'll go ahead.
A second by Commissioner Lemmerman. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion passed. So next up, the Health Department.
Yep. Do you want me to open with that one, Tracy, or do you want to speak on it a little bit first?
Well, I could provide a little bit of history. This is a project that's certainly familiar to all of you. You did authorize a certain funding level out of the ARP funds. We had Aaron Wosak through Spicer do a design for us as we initially conceived the project, sent it out for bids, and they were just through the roof. One was close to, I think, $500,000 and the other was over $600,000. So we just, we said, no, too much. Let's just sit on this thing for a little bit. After that, Tony and Aaron put their heads together and thought of a different sort of design for this thing and felt optimistic that it might bring costs down. So with that new design and you folks, we approached you for authorization for that additional work by Aaron last couple of meetings. And sent that out for bids. It came back and much better luck this time. Tony, do you want to pick it up from there and talk about the bids that you got and those contractors?
Yeah. What we did, we can go back to the design real quick. The original design, we had there was 4 furnaces that were going to be placed in the attic. So there was going to be a space that had to be built
trunk lines to carry the heating and cooling load for the east and west side of the building. Right now, they've got these PTAC units. They're basically heating and cooling units that sit underneath the windows. They're all worn out. They don't work. They've corroded. They're original. We're just hit. It's time. But we want to take those units out and install 4 new furnaces, additional furnaces, to supply the heat and air. Now, the original design with the attic, Aaron and I talked about it. I talked to some other people. I spoke with the health department. We redesigned and relocated those furnaces so they're actually on the ground floor and storage spaces. So we've relocated them, and yeah, definitely the cost that we came in at out of Greenville, refrigeration mechanical services came in at $477,075.72. And then we had another bid from Custom Plumbing and Heating out of Mount Pleasant that was $386,000. I got on the phone with Aaron Wasek and Dan Rons and Mike Wright. Dan Rons is the owner of Custom Plumbing and Heating, and Mike is his senior estimator. The 4 of us did a conference call. Aaron got all the questions he wanted. We clarified a few things, and Aaron even submitted a letter of recommendation recommending that we move forward with custom heating. I've worked with custom heating professionally in the past, mainly on a residential scale, but I can tell you if Dan says he can do it, he's going to do a good job. So.
Is that the Mount Pleasant bid or the Greenville?
That's the Mount Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant, Central Plumbing and Heating out of Mount Pleasant. We've used them several times. They've gotten us out of a couple bad jams over at the jail with some plugged drains. Done some other work for us here at the county. They do a lot of work in Gratiot County. They employ a lot of Gratiot County people. So
we're seeking a motion and approval, we hope, of authorizing or approving custom heating and plumbing out of Mount Pleasant to do the health department HVAC renovation project, authorizing $386,000 at $386,000.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Bunting. We have a second.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Bailey. Any discussion? Questions?
The only question I had, now this is for the heating and cooling. Didn't we have other things that we were gonna do in the health department with windows and things like that?
Tony, do you remember that? Was there a Windows component to the project?
just underneath the windows, that portion where those units get removed is going to have.
Oh, I thought we were changing windows.
Yeah, I
No.
do too.
No,
Okay.
Just fill that area,
Oh, I see.
right?
Okay, I misunderstood.
it's just the infill, so, yeah.
I misunderstood.
That includes all of this, right, Tony? Custom heating will do that too. They'll fill in the windows. Or is that somebody else?
Oh, good. Okay.
This is a mechanical prime basically, he's gonna be the general on the job. He's solicited painters, drywallers. There's a company that's good framing for him, so he's got that all included. So that was all part of the original set of plans that Aaron provided everybody, so. Yep.
Any other questions?
He should be able to, he said he would be able to start in the spring. Between the cold and hot, it's gonna take probably 6 weeks to run that through plan review at the state of Michigan Mechanical Division, so. Yeah, just throwing that in there.
And the bid's firm for that period.
Yes, yeah, he'll be under contract, so,
We'll put together a contract then for your signature.
yeah.
Incorporating all of this.
Yeah, I think the prices have kind of flatlined a little bit. Concrete prices are still going up, but those huge jumps that we were seeing in mechanical equipment, I think they've settled a little bit, from what I'm hearing, so.
That's good news.
It was a rough go there first, but.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passed. So now we're on
Chuck,
to,
I got one other question. When we got here tonight, there was this, it's about the
That's not water softener.
water softener. Oh, okay.
he's got one more. This is number 3. It's trifecta.
I skipped right over.
And I'll address that here. Ready for water softener?
Yep.
Water softener, Tony.
So the water softener over at the jail, starting to show signs of failure. We had the water tested. Just kind of confirms that there's some deterioration going on. The whole system needs to be replaced. That falls in between the $10,000 and $25,000 purchase policy. So we've got 3 different estimates to replace that system, to remove and dispose of the existing system and replace it with a new. There's Connecticut out of Clare. They used to be called Owens Soft Water. We got Lindsay out of St. Louis and Total, which is Culligan's out of Elma. Now, Lindsay Soft Water and Total Culligan's, they run pretty much the same style of equipment. Connecticut's come up with a little different program, and you can kind of see the difference between them and the second lowest bidder, the $6,112. They use smaller tanks and they base everything on water flow and the volume of water flow. They actually run non-electric. There's no computers, there's no electricity. It's all hydraulic driven by water pressure. I've checked with I spoke with a lot of people. I spoke with the head plumber over at Alma College for his advice. I spoke with some other people. It sounds like a really good deal. I did get a list of places where they've installed these and they haven't had any issues. They've been working good. So for $6,112, I'm kind of inclined to give Connecticut a shot at getting this done. It does have to be replaced. It's the system that we have is worn out. I spoke with Sheriff Morris about it. But yeah, that would be, this is kind of a new one for me. Like I say, the bigger ones were apples to apples. This is kind of a whole new system. I like what I see and what I read into it, but yeah.
This recommendation, in quotes, as Tony put it, with these systems, it's comparing apples to grapefruit. Love that. I'm going to use it forever. But we spent a lot of time. We spent an hour and a half on the phone with these 3 vendors, or 2 of them, asking about their systems and having to learn about these things, and notes galore. And then Tony did all of the checking that he did. And he was just a little nervous when you know nothing about water softeners. I mean, you have such a price difference and completely different systems. It felt like a little bit out there, but I think that there just can't be any additional assurance or information we can get. The recommendation is to just go for that with, of course, a reputable company and a representative that's been very communicative and responsive. Now, what we did last week is we just wanted to get this thing on the agenda, but these discussions were ongoing. We'd already done the hour and a half on the phone, and Tony had made some calls, but we didn't have all of these documents in our hands yet. Which is why they didn't get included with the board packet, but I've provided you those, Angie, so that they can be added as the extras. And I think put this table on top, just because I think it gives you the clearest summary look at what these systems are. So bottom line is, it is our recommendation that we go with the Kinetic Pro Total Water Care System in the amount of $11,486.
Now these are all reputable companies, so I don't want to I'm not taking away from the other two companies by any means, but, for $6,000, I almost, the difference, I almost think give them a shot. So.
The other units, they use salt, do they? Like normal units? Over the life of that could be thousands of dollars worth of salt. And on top of that.
Uses salt.
They all use salt.
They all use salt.
I thought that one didn't use.
No, they all, it doesn't use electricity.
This is based on volume.
Oh,
It's on volume. I have something of this in my house. It's a smaller unit,
okay,
but how much it uses, how much salt it uses.
okay.
And the salt use,
I have a smaller unit just like this, but it's not this name brand, but
the salt use per regeneration, you'll see here is quite a bit less.
Okay.
I guess when you look at it, I mean, he's got the same machines as CP 216 in the Perry Hotel, Gladwin County Transit, Chippewa Motel in there, Crystal Mountain Resort, Treetops Hotel. Probably Oak Bar Motel.
Yeah.
Also.
Tony, I'm looking at one thing where we got two numbers in a different place. It says warranty on your summary sheet for the Kinnico of 4 years. And then on the next page, it says it's 5 years. Is it a 4-year warranty or a 5-year warranty?
That's a 5-year. I apologize for that.
Okay, so that's a typo on the first page.
Yeah, yep,
That's 5 years.
yeah. That's on the entire system.
And then,
They do have a good warranty. I checked into that. They do have a good warranty.
and Sheriff Morris, you concur in this recommendation?
Yeah, I'll get up here and a little bit. I think the current system was put in 03, so it's lasted almost 20 years. So when the jail got remodeled back in 03, I believe that was all replaced back then. I remember you served me correctly after 20 years, but yes.
Yeah, this Connecticut, like I say, was formerly Owens Soft Water Company, and that's who the jails use. That's who we actually use in the connector building as well. So I've never heard any complaints about their service. So, well,
Any other questions? Motion none?
Oh, so moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lemmerman. We have a second. By Commissioner Bailey. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye, opposed, nay. Motion passed.
Thank you, Tony, very much.
yeah, thank you.
So. Up to Tracy, you handling the next one.
I am. These are always tough issues for this board, I recognize, and so I don't bring it to you lightly. This is something we've been talking about, considering, preparing for you for a number of weeks, actually. There is a packet, a memo with some attachments in your board packet. And I hope you had a chance to review that, because that really puts it about as well as I can put it. But the memo lays out the issue pretty well, the history of this thing, differences between a human resources officer and the human resources director in terms of duties and qualifications, compensation scales and financial analysis. With your help, kind of going back and doing the history piece, but with your help, we've built professional administrative services here in the county. We have Matt in IT, Chris in finance, Sheila in HR. And we've had an HR officer position in the past. That position was assigned to more rudimentary, less complex HR functions. You have that, Jan?
I don't have that.
Well, here, let me just give you mine, a few notes on this. Might have to sort it. Here's the
Page 110, yes.
Here's the packet for you. Okay, the whole thing, the memo, let's see. Like I said, I might have to peek at some of my notes here at some.
No, I don't have the.
Okay. I hope you had a chance to review that. This.
That's the only papers I have.
Okay. Hang on to those, because Matt's gonna go over that with you. Okay. That's the non-disclosure.
Okay, yeah, the only thing I have is
There's
with this.
No,
That's the only thing I had with the.
no. There's the whole thing right there for you.
Yeah. I don't think I read this. Okay.
Okay. So again, building professional administrative services, bringing in, just some great folks that you've worked with and come to know very well. The HR officer position, as I was saying, was something that I did with your help. Taking HR sorts of duties that were spread across 3 positions 6 years ago and brought them together under one umbrella and one staff person. And Terry, thank you very much, because Terry served in that position. There was a fair amount of significant oversight by me in that position. So the goal, though, has been to bring that position to the director level, involving a person with education, preferably a 4-year degree in HR, and the experience to perform a higher level, more complex HR functions, including, for example, expanding the new employee onboarding process. That is a work in progress. Significant involvement in negotiations with unions, both preparation and the role at the table, thus pulling me out of it and changing my role in all of that, which is better for this organization. Participating in recruitments in an active and advisory role. This is especially helpful to new managers. Significant amount of support, and if he were still here, he would agree. Significant amount of support to Charlie Perkins as he's been reorganizing, bringing new people on board in his department. The HR director level would also involve interpreting contracts, helping managers stay within the lines. And this also takes that function off of my plate. An HR director would work directly with department heads on employee coaching and disciplinary action, again, taking this off of the administrator's plate, and remaining abreast on changes in legislation and regulations so as to keep us on track, compliant with the law. Benefits management, that's not just administering these, but also developing additional resources and opportunities for employees. One of those recently came to you. So these skills, again, are developed through education, again, preferably a 4-year degree in HR and prior experience in the field. SHRM certification, certification to Society for Human Resources Management. Pretty big deal in the profession. It's something that one studies for over long hours, takes an exam, passes or doesn't pass. Our currently HR officer does now have SHRM certification. So that really is it's a feather in her cap. And frankly, it's a credit to Gratiot County that we have a SHRM certified individual on our staff. So I'd said that in the past, we had the HR officer position when we, 2 years ago, when we recruited for the new position upon very successful ascension to the treasurer's office. It wasn't the time. And frankly, I wasn't optimistic that we were going to, for paying, that we were going to be able to attract an HR director level position. But now is the time. We have an individual in our organization, again, Sheila Bartley, who's classified and is paid as an HR officer, the lower level, but who possesses the qualifications and performs the functions of an HR director. So I'm asking this board to authorize 2 levels of positions in the Human Resources Office. And I've asked you for these 2 levels or 2 tiers in other offices: community development, equalization, probably others I can't remember. But seeking, I would like to retain the HR officer position. I'm asking for position authority for an HR director. Once again, not hiring 2 of those or having 2 individuals in that department at those two levels. But if we are not able to attract in the future someone at the HR director level, we already have the position authority for that HR officer and would then recruit at that level. So, so that's the two levels piece. So I am asking again for the authority to, to grant authority for position authority for an HR director level. And I would intend to place Sheila Barnaby in that position in as much as she possesses the education, she possesses the experience, she now possesses SHRM certification. And we can take HR functions divided between the HR officer and my desk and bring them together into one HR director position. Again, as it relates to Sheila Barnaby, she's qualified as an HR director, has been performing those duties, but has been classified and paid at the lower level HR officer position. So I'm seeking position authority. And then understanding that I would seek to put Sheila in that position, I would ask if you would make her pay be retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year, October 1. So that's a double request. What questions do you have?
I have several. How much is she making right at this time?
That is all in your.
I didn't see it. The only thing I had was this page.
You've got it all. It's right here. It's all right.
Okay, I'll check that. On the back sheet. Okay, I see you had several pages. I only have 3. So,
No, you have more than 2. Your question.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I think I had figured this out. That was around $11 an hour more, right?
As is indicated on that table, she is currently an HR officer position at step 3 is compensated at the rate of $22.36 an hour. An individual on the department head scale at grade 5, but at the first step would be $33.81.
What I see here is that she will be making more money than all the elected officials. And she's not an elected official, she's a hired in.
Does that have to do with anything?
Well, I mean, we're talking about people that's been elected into a position and have been here 5, 6 years, I'm not sure on most of them.
They were elected, they knew what the consequences and they knew their salary would be when they got elected, right? They did it voluntarily. It's a completely different situation.
No, I don't see it as different. What I do see though, is like, if we don't give her the $7, she'll be put in or.
I have no idea, and that's not why I'm here. I'm here to describe for you and remind you about the development of professional administrative services, and describe for you that the timing is right because we have an individual who meets all of those qualifications. The compensation, by the way, this is not a number that we picked out of the clear blue sky. This position was a part of, again, I've indicated that I've been thinking about this for a few years. I had asked Mark Notley as a part of that 2019 study to evaluate an HR director position. So that's why I can comfortably place it at grade 5. And you see the scale, it is in your packet. So that's a market rate.
Has she been a HR person at how many other places before she came here?
She has 10 years of experience in the HR field. I can only remember 2 of the employers, one at Clover, and I believe you had some experience with her there. And she was also at Masonic. I can't remember.
Okay.
So these are large employers right here in Gratiot County.
I get kind of how I feel about it. I would not give anybody $11 raise. HR or anybody, unless it was probably maybe someone that, like the sheriff's office deputies who were 7 days a week off and on and night 24-hour shifts. And I gotta tell you too, I come over here a lot of Fridays when there's hardly anybody here. So I'm thinking that there's a lot of employees here, they get paid 40 hours a week for 5 days, but are only here maybe 4 days a week. Especially, I've come over here at the end of the day and hardly anybody walks out. So that's a concern. I think that everybody here gets paid really well. That's my one issue. My second issue would be if somebody doesn't want their job, I'll switch with them. I make $9.87. I just got a 5-cent raise. And I'm more than happy to work with the schools to help them out. I'd be happy to work here to help you guys out. And I think this is ridiculous, paying $11 more an hour. And they make more than people that's been here 5, 6 years. You've got people here longer than that don't even make that much. I did ask for, I think I've asked several times, I'd like a printout of everybody that works here. How much are they making and how long have they been here? So unfortunately, I'm going to be leaving tomorrow because my foster mother has passed away and I'm going to go to the funeral. But when I get back, I'm coming over here and I'll sit here and I will wait until I get that information. But I think this is ridiculous, giving people this kind of a raise. But that's my opinion.
Tracy, we're looking at, you're circling, step 1. What does it take to go to step 2 in this situation?
Progressing across the steps is largely a function of seniority and longevity. So one starts at step 1. When one has been here for a year and performs satisfactorily, they would go to step 2. And so
Pretty much yearly. Okay.
yes.
Tracy, the only part of your request I didn't understand was you want to have the director position and an office?
Yes, I'm asking that we retain the HR officer position authority. But I'm requesting position authority for an HR director, making very clear, as I have with the other tiered positions, that I would not ever intend to have them both. And it's just if I were to advertise for an HR director in the future, not be able to attract anyone with those qualifications, I could proceed and list and recruit an HR officer, the lower level position. I'd have that flexibility.
Okay, I will make the motion according to your stipulations that you asked as far as the 2-part position. And as far as the promotion goes for Sheila.
Thank you.
I'll support.
So motion by Commissioner Lemmerman, second by Commissioner Bailey. Any further discussion?
Would you be inclined to make that adjustment of Sheila Barnaby retroactive
To the first of the fiscal year?
That's part of your motion?
Acceptable to you, George?
Or I'll amend it or however it needs to be.
Any further questions, discussion?
Well, I think it's about a 38% raise. And I don't know, I'm not looking at the person, I'm looking at the position, and I don't know if we need that position here. When we give people here 4% raises, I think it was, and union contracts and stuff like that. I just think to open up a position like that to get to, am I right at $96,000?
With the benefits.
With the benefits versus $59,000. So it's about a 38% raise to have that position. And I guess I don't think we warrant that position here. I think if you're looking at the person, I think she's doing a fine job. I think she's probably paid well. I know she got some more education and stuff like that, but I just look at the position and I just think I don't think we need a $90,000 each or $96,000 HR person here, you know.
Addressing the raise issue, if I may, it's not a raise. What it is a difference in compensation.
I understand.
To employees.
I understand that. That position pays 90, you want that position to pay $96,102 based on some gentleman that you had spoke with, that's what it should pay.
Not some gentleman that we.
The guy, no, the guy from
The study by.
study, right, yes.
Back in 2019.
Right.
So, yeah, just understand it's not a number, pulled out of the.
I know that, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I just think when you look at that, and if I was sitting in this county and I got a 4% raise doing whatever I do here, I wouldn't sit well with me. If we created a position and moved somebody right into it, not even posting the job. Not even posting for an HR director, or whatever we want to do, we're gonna slide somebody right into it. And that's just on the personal side. I'm just looking at the position. I don't believe we need a $96,000 position to handle the RHR right here.
Well, I would suggest to you, it's not about needing or not needing a $96,000 position. We prefer not to. Expertise and experience and education is expensive. And I simply would submit that there are differences in the level at which an HR officer is to perform and at an HR director is to perform. And I would submit that a $58 million organization does need a fully qualified HR director. So I just, this isn't a small business. It's a large organization, 150 to 175 employees. So I just offer that.
Any further discussion?
No, like call the question. Does that say call the question or? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Angie, we probably should call a roll on this.
Commissioner Lumberman,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Bunting,
No.
Commissioner Murphy.
No, motion failed.
Appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
All right, next up, Matt, you're with Point Broadband non-disclosure agreement, I think.
Yep, that's correct. So tonight I brought before the board a non-disclosure agreement for your consideration. It would be between Point Broadband, which is a local internet service provider, and Gratiot County, on behalf of the Gratiot County Broadband Advisory Group that the board formed a few months ago. And what this agreement does is it makes it so that Point Broadband feels a little bit more comfortable disclosing some of their private plans for building out broadband in Gratiot County. So it allows them to speak a bit more freely than they would otherwise, and it makes them feel comfortable doing that. One thing that we did do is we submitted it to our legal counsel, and they suggested putting some language in there that made it very clear what things were allowed to disclose under a Freedom of Information Act request, and we have to by law. So we added that language in there to protect the county in case we're FOIA'd for this proprietary information. And that's really all the background I have, but I'm willing to answer questions if anybody has any.
I think Point Broadband has plowed a lot of cable into a lot of rural areas. I mean,
Yeah.
they're down on Rainbow Lake, they're in Maple Rapids, they're the players, I think, in the area.
One of the big players. There's another one, Homeworks, it's called. It's on the west side of the county. Those are the two of the people that we'd be talking to. Basically, the non-disclosure would prevent us from saying the other guy, they're gonna do this.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing we're looking at in a discussion.
I think that's, if I was Point Broadband, I'd probably want something like that. Talk to you. Yeah.
That's all it does is prevent us from taking their information and giving it to someone.
This is how they're gonna do it. How can you do it? Yeah,
Exactly.
I understand. I'd make that motion.
It does not insulate the information from a FOIA, however, and that's where we had to get the legal counsel involved.
And it would still could be FOIA if.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable with that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I understand the issue.
Really, when you look at FOIA, it's really anything written probably. They would have to give you like a written plan of how they're gonna do it or whatever, because really you could they subpoena somebody under a FOIA.
Yeah.
If I told you something on Point Broadband, and I told you something, could they subpoena him under a FOIA to tell him what I told him? No, so it'd be written, anything written to communication, yeah.
And we'll have those
Yeah, so that.
documents.
I know, subject, but you hear all the time about the FOIA information and it's heavily redacted. Could you do that? I mean, could you just like strike a whole bunch of stuff out?
That by 100 look babies for.
It would depend on the situation.
Yeah.
You can challenge that. I'm sure if I was receiving the paperwork, I'd challenge that.
I think a judge does that.
You're gonna be able to justify.
Yeah, I don't know if we could, probably a judge. does.
Depends on the
It
situation.
doesn't happen because on TV.
Right, right.
We aren't the military.
All right, looks like,
Yeah, I made the motion, whatever, don't matter, yeah, I'll second it.
so, motion by Commissioner Lemmerman, second by, Commissioner Smith. And I believe you have it, right?
Yes.
To sign a non-disclosure agreement.
I do. I have that.
Any further discussion, questions? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed.
Thank you.
So we are to John, we're to you with the drain prepayment plan.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna read this off. This was an email that Chris had sent me earlier today. And he said, you may want to pull this from communications to discuss, and he had to take off. So he asked that I would cover this. There are 3 drain prepayment notices. Drain 381 is $77,938. Drain 31 is $53,200. And drain 522, $16,758. So the total, if we prepaid all 3, would be $147,896. And we have budgeted $200,000 for prepaids. The estimated interest rate on these for a 20-year loan would be 5 to 5.5%. So just as we were talking amongst ourselves, it seems like it's in the best interest of the county to prepay these. So I would like to make a motion that we prepay these 3 drains, total of $147,896. Angie, I can give this to you. Okay. I'd like to make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Lemmerman, second by Commissioner Bunting.
Just real quick, we budgeted 200 for this year.
Right.
Did we do something at the end of the year? What did we do? Did we have one that come due maybe after into this year that we paid it early last year or something? We still had money left. Because there was something about the end of the year that we did a drain early payoff. It was like $58,000 or something.
I don't recall.
This is the only one we've done this year. In this,
I believe it is. I believe it is. So I think maybe what we did is we had prepaid earlier and then we had to do an amendment.
maybe that's what it was. Maybe the number was different. We did that in this year but it was for last year's drains.
Fiscal year was up.
Yeah, okay. So we did it this year, but it was for last year's drains. I think that's what it was. The numbers were.
Yeah, I think this is over the 90-day bond rate, isn't it? Do you know where they're at?
Yeah. So there is no short-term rates or long-term rates. It's over 5. And this would be 5 to 5.5%.
It's simple.
All righty, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay, motion passed. So we've got about 50,000 left on the budget on that. All right, next, anyone have any unfinished business? And then we're going to need a closed session. So any additional public comment? And anybody online that you could see for public comment?
I'm not seeing anybody else online, but I will ask, do you want me to stay on for coming back out of the public session afterwards? Or do you plan on just,
Yeah, maybe just stay on, but we'll have to disconnect for the. All right, so we'll need a motion to go into closed session, and it's for pending opioid litigation.
George moved, I second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Bailey, second by Commissioner Lemmerman. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye, opposed, nay? Very good. And Matt, you'll let us know when we're unhooked, and then we can come back on it.
yep, bear with me one moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.